Hey there, it's Stephanie and Mike from sixfiguresunder.com. So today we're going to talk about budgeting when you're not the only one, when you're not alone and you are budgeting with a spouse, you're trying to pay off debt, and sometimes it's hard to get your spouse on board.
Yeah, and so we've heard from a lot of readers, people who email or comment or ask questions, or even outside of the blog, where they say it's really hard to get on the same page with your spouse when the thing you're trying to do is something hard, like pay off debt or spend less on things that you like spending money on. That's for a lot of reasons. It could be different backgrounds, different money styles, different experience with finances. It might be you came into the relationship with a different level of cash or a different level of debt, and there's some difficulty about who takes care of what. For whatever reason, having more than one person who has to agree on how things are working in your finances can be tricky.
But it works so much, like there's so much power that comes when you're on the same page and you're working together. You can get more done than you could by yourself. So it's definitely worth it to get together and make it work.
Yeah. So the question is, how do you help someone you love, someone you've chosen to go through life with, to understand that a budget is an exercise in freedom, that it's a good thing, not like a B word, something that brings pain and limitation and going without. It's a good thing, and that it helps you choose what to do with your money. It tells your money what you want it to do for you, and how do you help them get on board with something like paying off debt, which may be hard to do because you have to give something up to get that goal done.
One thing that's worked for us is to approach it from a goal standpoint. Approach it from, what do you want? What do you want your money to do? What are your dreams? What are your desires? What would be the thing? If money wasn't holding you back, what would you want to do? Approach it from that and talk, discuss, plan your lives, get excited. If there's a reason to do it, it's a lot easier to sacrifice and do the hard things that are paying off debt and doing a budget. If you go at it just from, okay, honey, we need to sit down and restrict ourselves. We need to make,
we got to stop spending money on going out. No more eating out. Like
yeah.
that's not a very exciting thing to talk about.
If there's not a reason, you're not going to stick to it. So my first recommendation is to go approach from a positive standpoint. These are the things we want to do. Wouldn't you love to do this? Wouldn't you love to do this? And get behind some goals together. That's a great way to get a spouse excited instead of feeling like you want to restrict them.
And once you have a goal, it might be a trip, it might be do something with the house, it might be a change in circumstance, a new job, it might be something that's better than what you have right now. Well, whatever that is, once you have that, then you have something that kind of stands in front of, and more importantly than, the changes you might have to make to get there. So then you say, well, how do we get there? This is what we want to do. This is what we would love to have. If money were no problem, this is what we're going to do. What do we need to do to get there? And the next thing you might do is to say, well, along the way there are going to be some expenses. We can't stop spending any money. That's just not going to work. So what are these things that what expenses are we willing to keep even though they don't directly contribute to our goal?
And that's something good to discuss with a spouse, because even though you're married, you still have different priorities. There might be something that your spouse doesn't want to give up, and maybe that's why they're reluctant to do the budget, because they're afraid you're going to make them cut that thing that's so important to them. So get together, talk about the things that are important to you, things that you're not willing to let go of, and put those down. Start with a blank sheet. Put the things that are most important. Of course, you probably want to have electricity, you probably want to have food, gas for the cars, those sorts of things. But
there may even be a way to change those things. It may be that you don't have to drive the car as much because your goal is big enough and exciting enough that you don't take those extra trips, or you ride your bike somewhere, or you walk, or you take a bus, whatever your circumstances might be that allow you to do something else. So while you still will have some expense there, it doesn't mean that you're stuck paying the same amount as you always did. But there will be some priority expenses that you're willing to keep. And you agree on those together. And you say, okay, these are things that, even though we have this goal, we're willing to do some things that don't directly contribute to the goal because those are important to us. And then you decide, for everything else, one rule that I've heard, which I think is really interesting, is you say anything beyond those expenses we've already agreed on, if it costs more than like $10, you have to get approval from the other spouse. This might seem really restrictive. That might seem kind of tyrannical, but really, if you've already agreed that these are your priorities and this is your goal, this is what you want to do with the rest of what you have, the thing you're really working toward, and you're with somebody that you love, and that you're both trying to do the same thing, that person who you have to check with can really be helpful.
So that's why I held up this violin at the beginning. So I went to a yard sale last week and saw this violin for $35. And honestly, I don't even play the violin, but music is a big part of my life. I've played a little bit, but anyway, I came home.
She might play the piano and the flute and the oboe and the guitar and some other things. So,
but not the violin yet. But even though that sounded like a great deal to me, I didn't want to go spending $35 without discussing it first. So I came home, thinking that he would talk some sense into me, saying, "Stephanie, we're paying off our house right now. We don't, that's $35 that could go toward our house." But you know what? He said, "You didn't get it? You should go back and get it. Go back right now and get it." And I was so happy because he understands that music is a big part of my life. And interestingly, one of the biggest regrets I have of purchases or non-purchases was when we were in law school and I went to a yard sale and found an open hole flute for, it was $35 or $40. That was beautiful, and I would have loved to have it. But at the time, we were living off of student loans, and every purchase I made, I tagged the interest on, thinking, we're paying, 6.8% on our student loans. Every purchase I make, am I willing to pay 6.8% for 10 years or however long it would be that we'd have those student loans? And so I decided against it. I didn't get the flute. And I've regretted it for years that I didn't. And he knows that. And I think that's probably why he said yes.
Besides violins, they're just beautiful instruments. It's a wonderful thing to have around.
We have 5 kids. I'm sure one of them will play. Will learn.
But so that's an example. But the $10 rule, if it's something that's important, you can say after the fact, this wasn't in our list of priority expenses we're willing to make. But it is something that right now, looking at our goal and looking at what we're looking, this particular expense is something that we're going to agree on. If I had said, "Stephanie, we have really important goals, and I don't think that a violin really fits with those,"
I would have been okay with that.
She wouldn't have bought it, and it would have been a little bit sad for her, but that's how we agreed to do it. So, rule 1 is figure out what your goal is, the thing that you're willing to work for, and then decide on the expenses you're willing to put up with, even though they don't directly contribute to the goal. And for anything beyond that, give your spouse or financial partner a veto. Say, if it's more than $10 or $15 or $5 or whatever your number is, say check it with them before you buy it. And if you agree, that's an agreement. You'll work together. And if you don't agree, it might be a little sad, but remember the goal.
That also gives you a little time to think on it and double check if you come home from the store or whatever, or sleep on it overnight and it still is a priority, then that I don't know. It just gives you more time to think about it than just impulse buying. You think, "Oh, I need to go home and discuss this first before spending."
Do any of you do something like this? I don't know how common it is or how frequent. It seems kind of
juvenile, maybe like I need to go ask Dad.
But it works pretty well for us. We kind of have an informal arrangement about it, but it works pretty well. And for some people who are very strict about it because they need to be really strict, it's worked really well.
Another thing you can do is to set a special allowance. Some couples call it fun money. Some call it, different things. Maybe an allowance. I don't know what you want to call it. Where each spouse gets a certain amount of money each month that they can do whatever they want with. Whether it's, if your budget's tight and it's just $10, or if you've got more money, you're thinking $50, whatever the amount isn't important. The thing that's important is you have your own money that you get to decide what to do with. You can save it all up and spend it at the end of the year, or you can you know, get your coffee and Coke or whatever you buy on the way home from work. Whatever you want to spend that money on, that's your money to do with.
And your spouse doesn't say anything about it because it's yours, and you don't say anything about hers because it's hers. And that way you have a little bit of freedom, kind of a buffer to act without having to feel like you're so restrained by this budget, even though it was you who chose the budget. It helps, you know, give a little bit of grace if you need that.
Help you to feel not so restricted. So those are a couple of ideas of things that have helped us to not feel constrained by a budget and help us be excited and motivated and on the same page. And when we've got that energy going on, when we've got the excitement and the working together, you can do great things. And so I'd love for you guys to comment and share the things that have helped you and your spouse or your partner to stick to a budget together, to be in it together and make progress so that we can all learn from each other. Do you have anything else to say about that?
Just remember, a budget is you telling your money what to do, not your paper with your, you know, or your spreadsheet. This is you saying, this is what we care about. This is the money we want to put in certain places. And so once you think about it that way, once you have a goal and you say the budget is to get us to our goal, it doesn't feel so restrictive and so restraining. And then the things like having that goal and deciding what you're going to spend it on and how you'll build in a little bit of buffer are really helpful, and you can do it. You can do it.
You can do it. Okay, have a good one, guys.